When you think of great conclusions to a film, what's the best one you can think of? Maybe it's the end of Star Wars: The Return of the Jedi, or Empire Strikes Back, or even the end of Revenge of the Sith, leaving you wanting more. Or perhaps it could even be one of Quentin Tarantino's many masterful conclusions. But I think the greatest conclusion ever in cinema history has to be the finale of the third act in Sergio Leone's The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. This film was the first movie that I ever watched that I consider to be a film. I was roughly about 5 years old when I first saw this movie, and still, to this day, it is my favorite movie ever. The writing is immaculate, and the music still manages to put a smile on my face every time I hear it. The grade A storytelling and masterful cinematography still is able to give me goosebumps. And who can forget the stellar performances by Eli Wallach, Lee Van Cleef, and Clint Eastwood. But when I was 5, I didn't care about none of that. I wanted to watch the man with no name kick some ass. So when I would watch this movie, I would fast forward to the end, right when Blondie throws Tuco the shovel. And I would watch Angel Eyes, Tuco, and Blondie have a good old-fashioned duel. I would watch this scene over and over again, constantly rewinding it until it was time for me to go to bed. But why? Why was I so obsessed? And why to this day do I still find this scene so astounding? The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, as I mentioned before, was directed by Sergio Leone, and this was his third installment in the masterful Dollars trilogy. Sergio Leone was a very good filmmaker, creating some of the best westerns ever made. Going back to the Dollars trilogy, in every movie, it's clear that Sergio Leone loves to end on a high note. In every one of these films, Leone ends it with a unique, satisfying duel. He usually makes these scenes long and drawn out. One could argue that those type of scenes are actually a negative and hurt the film as a whole. You could go back and forth for days and still not have a clear answer. I, for one, actually love when movies are able to grab and hold my attention the entire time. And that's what this scene is so good at doing. The opening scene is able to do this too. Throughout the film, you are engaged, immersed in the universe that Sergio Leone created. We are introduced to Tuco, Angel Eyes, and Blondie. We watch as these three keep crossing paths with each other. We see Tuco and Blondie go back and forth, which leads to them having an unsteady partnership. Angel Eyes enlisting in the Union Army, just so he can get more information about the treasure, and him using coercion against Tuco and Blondie, to them getting separated and coming back together again. So when you get this scene, where they all converge and meet at this point, you know it's probably the last. Blondie looks over to Angel Eyes and tells him,
"If you shoot me, you won't see a cent of that money."
Now it's all coming together. The camera gives us a shot of Blondie with his badass poncho walk to the middle of the cemetery. He places the stone in the middle of the cemetery, the music starts to pick up, and now we know what's about to happen. As the men walk to their positions, Sergio Leone does what he does best. He builds up this scene with suspense and anticipation. As you sit there watching this, your attention is never lost in this scene. The cinematography is masterful. Ennio Morricone's The Trio doesn't get enough credit. The editing is masterful, and the performance by each actor is 10 out of 10. The way Sergio captures Angel Eyes, slowly inch his hand toward his gun, and then edits to Blondie's eyes, and then Angel Eyes moves his hand back. Leone is able to capture and hold our attention for 4 minutes and 50 seconds. As you watch, you can feel the suspense. And then, Angel Eyes goes for it, ultimately being the one to lose. Satisfied with that, you watch the final scenes of this cinematic masterpiece. It's amazing to me that this movie still holds up to this day. The cinematography is still brilliant. Ennio Morricone's music throughout the Dollars trilogy is still my favorite score of all time. The conclusion to this film still remains a spectacle that hasn't been matched in any Western. From the moment our attention is grabbed by the amazing cinematography to the movie's final showdown, you don't feel like you've finished another movie. You feel like you've just finished an experience.